I'm Ed Gillespie. I'm running for governor of Virginia.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So big picture, you're an establishment figure running in the Trump era. How's that working for you?
You know, everywhere I go in Virginia, and I go everywhere in Virginia, people are responsive to my message about, reorienting our approach to economic development and putting a greater focus on startups and scale-ups, making it easier to open a new business in Virginia, to expand an existing one. People are interested in ideas and policies and how are we going to improve life for all Virginians. And I have a plan that will make our future better for all Virginians. And I find everywhere I go, people are very responsive and appreciative of that approach.
You're in a little bit of a tricky situation in that Trump clearly did not win in November, but he did win the Republican primary. That said, it doesn't seem like the most Trump-style opponent in the primary is gaining much traction. But how do you interpret the Trump win nationally and what it says about both parties, really?
I think it revealed a concern about our future, and I see that here in Virginia. We've had 3 straight years now where more people have moved out of Virginia than into Virginia. It had never happened at all since we started collecting that data in 1978, and now we've had 3 straight years of it. For 10 years now, we've been swapping out high-paying jobs for low-paying jobs, and our economic growth is anemic. The most recent year we have was a 2% growth rate, which is pathetic, but that was the first time in 5 years we got above 1%. And I feel the economic anxiety with my fellow Virginians as I travel the Commonwealth, and it's more pronounced in certain parts of Virginia than other parts, but everywhere. I was just meeting with a large group of women here in Northern Virginia talking about economic opportunity, and I told a story about a young woman I was talking to a couple weeks ago, 26 years old, grew up here in Northern Virginia, moved in her teen years to Richmond, went to high school in Richmond, went to JMU and got a nursing degree, and she's living in Houston, Texas right now. And she'd rather be living in Virginia, but the opportunities aren't here.
Now, the man you'd like to replace would say, we'd create all these healthcare jobs and employ that nurse, bring her back, if we just expanded Medicaid under Obamacare. What's your thought about that?
Well, if you look at the states that have expanded Medicaid, they've put their taxpayers on the hook long term for a significant hit. And you're already seeing it now, even before there is more of a cost shift to the states. And so I've got policies, and I'm going to put them forward. I have 9 different policy development working groups. Healthcare is one of them. Each of these policy working groups is co-chaired by a member of our state Senate or our House of Delegates, so that I can hit the ground running if I'm elected to get this agenda introduced in our assembly. And we can make healthcare more affordable and more accessible without expanding the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we need to take a different approach. We do need to make it more affordable, more accessible, but Medicaid expansion is not the right answer for Virginia.
And looking at Obamacare more broadly, this came up in the debate and also back in 2014 when you ran for Senate. There are people who point to your book. Here, we'll give a little plug. And Corey Stewart was pitching your book in the last debate and saying how page 245 you endorse the individual mandate, and so you did explore this issue of having every emancipated adult capable of providing his or her health care do so possibly through the tax code. Is that not a version of the individual mandate, which I think originally came out of the Heritage Foundation or some conservative think tank?
Well, a couple things. First of all, thanks for plugging the book, Winning Right, Campaign Politics and Conservative Policies, and I wrote it in 2006, and I always say if you had bet my college roommates 30 years ago that Ed Gillespie would ever read a book, let alone write one, you wouldn't have had any takers. But I'm proud of that book, and I did talk about the healthcare debate that was going on at the time in 2006, and talked about expanding health savings accounts, which I think is a good policy. I talked about tax credits, which is what I was talking about in that chapter of the book and what the debate was at the time. There is a big difference between a tax credit and a mandate. People who take a tax credit for home buying are not mandated to buy a home. People who take a tax credit for health insurance are not mandated to buy health insurance. We do want to make it more affordable And that was one of the options. There's a lot of different options that have come into play, obviously, over the past 11 years, and that's what Congress is looking at now in terms of their debate over repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. How do you make it more affordable, get more people covered without the mandate? And I fought the mandate tooth and nail, as you know, during the course of the debate of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, as it was moving through Congress, and vigorously opposed the mandate. So I oppose a mandate.
So you were looking more carrot than stick on that, in terms of you saw the benefit of inducing more people to provide their own insurance.
Look, I think we need to make health care more affordable for more Americans and for more Virginians with our state policy. But there is a very significant difference from an employer mandate versus a tax credit.
Now you rolled out an ethics package,
yes.
And you've also accepted the endorsement of Bob McDonnell, who was on 60 Minutes the other night. I don't know if you happened to see him on there. Was he wrong? I felt watching that show he was saying he wouldn't do it again, but he wasn't particularly remorseful.
What I saw him say was that he complied with the laws of the Commonwealth at the time. I think the Supreme Court seemed to, at the end of the day, side with him in that regard. We've passed some policies in response to that since, but I believe there's much more we need to do. And I've unveiled a 15-point plan. I call it my Faith in Government for All Virginians plan. And FAITH stands for fairness, accountability, integrity, transparency, and honesty. And the first thing I will do if elected governor of the Commonwealth we love is sign an executive order that is a zero gift ban. No gifts at all for me, for my immediate family, for my appointees. I will also make sure that our state legislators, and I'm proud that they have joined me in calling for this, that no personal use of campaign funds, and also put an end to the bait and switch practice that elected officials have been able to use here in the Commonwealth, where they raise money to run for one office and then use it to run for another office. That's unfair to people who don't hold elected office.
Now, when you unveiled that, there was some pushback from folks who said, "Oh my gosh, Ed Gillespie, he's been in government, then he's been a lobbyist back and forth. He's been in the revolving door. Does that mean this is chutzpah to propose this, or is that you've seen it up close and you know what needs to be done?"
I think my experience working at the highest levels of government as counselor to the President of the United States in the White House, in the Capitol, and helping to draft the contract with America and implement it, helping to get the first balanced federal budget that we had in 25 years. My private sector experience, I have started 3 successful small businesses. Kathy and I know what it's like to put your house down as the collateral on a loan that you use to pay rent and meet payroll for the first year you open your doors. And I think all those experiences and insights that I've gained in my professional life help inform me and would help make me an effective governor. I think it's important to have a governor in particular, given how dependent we remain on federal policies and federal spending, who knows how to get things done in Washington, D.C. for our fellow Virginians, who can work with a Republican majority in the House and the Senate and a Republican president. In the meantime, I think it's helpful to have someone who has my experience in the private sector on Capitol Hill, in the executive branch, be able to make sure that when it comes to those federal policies that so directly affect us in Virginia, that we get them right.
On immigration, Corey Stewart and some others have tried to suggest that you, in advocating for the Gang of Eight compromise, that you were, while not necessarily saying you liked every aspect of that deal, were saying, hey, I think the deal's a good one, and the deal did include a pathway to citizenship, even though I think you personally have always advocated for pathway to legal status or something, a little distinction. But I think we're in an era where any kind of compromise is viewed with great suspicion. So I guess I'm asking 2 things. Is that a fair characterization of your stance, and is that something that you have to explain in this era when people don't necessarily want nuance or giving anything to the other side?
Yeah, I've always opposed amnesty for people who have come here illegally. My father came to this country as a boy from Ireland because my grandfather found work in America as a janitor. And my parents, you know, my father and his father, they came here legally through Ellis Island, and they played by the rules. And we have a lot of Virginians who have come here legally and played by the rules, and you know, we need to respect those rules. You know, even with President Bush in the White House, when he was advocating path to citizenship, as you may know, I opposed that, wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying that that's a bridge too far, and we shouldn't, you know, reward people who have come here illegally with one of the greatest things that we can confer in the world, which is American citizenship. And so I do oppose, you know, citizenship because I do consider that to be amnesty. I do think, and I ran in my Senate race on what I think were common sense reforms that would have been helpful at the federal level. You know, on a state level, we have some policies, although immigration is federal policy, but there are some things I think that are important here. We had, for example, Ralph Northam cast a tie-breaking vote and in support of allowing for sanctuary cities to be established in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I don't think that's a good idea for us. I also believe that we should not issue state-issued legal identification driver's licenses to people who are here illegally. And you know, we have a challenge for Virginia students being able to get into our great public colleges and universities, and we need to make sure that people who are playing by the rules are first in line in that regard. And I know that, you know, young people who were brought here by their parents illegally through no fault of their own, I appreciate that, but, you know, we can't ask our taxpayers to subsidize their tuition and deny it to Virginians who are here legally and are citizens of the Commonwealth. And yet, both Tom Perriello and Ralph Northam support subsidized in-state tuition for people who are here illegally.
We haven't had too much on social issues so far, with the exception of there's been some talk of abortion. But I'm wondering, where are you on gay marriage these days?
Well, you know, as governor, you enforce the laws, and the Supreme Court has made clear that gay marriage is the law, and I will enforce our laws. And you know, obviously, gay marriage is the law. I don't seek to change it. You know, I'm happy to enforce our laws in that regard.
And on abortion, would you like to roll back some of the things that Governor McAuliffe has done by executive order?
Well, I certainly would want to ensure the safety of women in the Commonwealth to make sure that you know, clinics meet health standards to reduce risk to women. As you know, I'm pro-life, and I do oppose abortion with exceptions for the life of the mother being in danger, rape, or incest. In terms of a governorship, you know, the authority that you have is you know, limited to regulations and things like that, and I would want to make sure that we have health standards. By the way, should note, I know I have a lot of friends who you know, don't agree with all of my exceptions. You know, in terms of my pro-life positions, and I respect that. I have a lot of friends who don't agree with my pro-life position as a whole, and I accept that too. But I do believe there are some, you know, some areas of consensus that most Virginians would agree can be some common ground, and we should look to find that. What's
your guilty pleasure if you're not busy running for governor or whatever? How do you have some fun?
Well, you know, anytime I'm with our family, with my family, that's as fun as it gets for me. My guilty pleasure, I guess I would say, are ice cream stands. And I know the best ice cream stands all across Virginia, and there are some very, very good ones. And that is kind of my weakness on the trail. Is
what's your flavor?
Well, yeah, my flavors vary. You know, if there's specials, I like those. I was at Klein's in Harrisonburg a couple weeks ago, and their special was cherry nut, and my friend Suzanne Obenchain strongly recommended it, and it was a good recommendation.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.